So don't worry that much. All right, about to go live here today. Let's make sure I've got it ready to go. So this is why I would really benefit from a personal assistant. All right, there we go. So about to go live. See, now I got to turn it down. Technology. I'm getting so much better at it. So hi everybody, Jeanne Casteen here. I'm on again. This is the plan for the coming weeks, 3:30 every day, and talk to somebody here in the Valley or in the state who's doing amazing things. And today that person is Dr. Susan Hughes. So I can't even remember. Gosh, where did we meet, Susan? Help me remember.
You know, that's a great question. I know that I don't know if it was through SOS people. I don't know if it was at a legislative district meeting. I'm honestly not sure. We just kept like running past each other. So
yeah,
I got
one of those things that happens when you're running a countywide campaign. I mean, this last year, I have met some of the most amazing people on the entire planet, and you are definitely one of them. So Susan, go ahead and introduce yourself. Give us a little bit of background of who you are and what you do and what drives you.
Sounds good. I'm Dr. Susan Hughes. I'm a retired family practice physician. I started off as an OB-GYN and went to Michigan State. About halfway through the residency, I realized I loved delivering babies, but I never wanted to do another hysterectomy in my life. So I switched to family practice where I could keep delivering babies and delivered between 3,000 and 4,000 babies over the course of my lifetime. A lot of little babies. And had a very, very busy family practice, was seeing basically newborns to great grandparents. It was really a lot of fun having the relationships through multiple generations. And was practicing in Washington State, very, very busy. Ended up having a medical spa to help people feel as good on the outside, you know, as they did on the inside. And life was good. Life was good. And you know what happens sometimes when life gets good? You get a curveball test at you. So we got a couple curveballs thrown at us. My husband was diagnosed with cancer. He's doing well now. He's in remission. Cure is what we're calling it. And then about, as he finished up the effects of radiation, we were in a car accident. And the car accident, my head took the window. And I had to retire from medicine because of that. And I call it going from impact to becoming impactful. I had to relearn to do a lot of things at that time. Still have, you know, challenges with use on my one side and things like that, but really was able to focus more on educational things when we moved down here. My husband and I, we had an educational nonprofit up in Washington State. It was called Bridges Northwest, which was bringing resources, integrating disciplines, generating educational solutions. And there's not going to be a quiz on that later. But the focus, the focus of that really was to be able to help bring new technologies, medical-based technologies, and interface with the educational system. And we were focused on sensational kids. Sensational kids is the phrase coined by Dr. Lucy Jane Miller, who actually became an acquaintance of mine. And she's at the Star Center in Denver. And so through that, you know, for 20 plus years, I had been advocating for my patients through IEPs, 504s, things like that, giving them information, really looking at the neurological basis of understanding, of learning, teaching people about neuroplasticity. And it was because I knew about neuroplasticity that I knew I would be not necessarily the same as I was before, but I had the ability to heal after a traumatic brain injury. So with that background of working on, with the nonprofit, coming down here to Arizona, always kind of shooting. Okay, I'm a diehard Cub fan. I think that should probably explain a lot. Diehard Cub fan. I know, utter trivia, diehard Cub fan. I've got my Cub hat over there too. But I guess that means I'm always rooting for the underdog. Okay, and so my mom was a sped teacher before she became a, elementary school teacher, and then elementary school principal. And so, I'd always grown up with kind of a sped kind of background, even though I wasn't a teacher. And so dealing with SPED, dealing with gifted, dealing with twice exceptional, dealing with executive functioning, dealing with all these different aspects, came down to Arizona, interesting factoid, had never been to a school board meeting prior to coming to Scottsdale. And that's where it turned out I was every Tuesday night. But anyways, or it felt like every Tuesday night, because we were going through a lot of corruption with the school district, and got very involved in that because it's all about our kids.
Yeah.
So I have the philosophy, and I can't remember who, I don't know if it was Martin Luther King, I don't know if it was Gandhi, I can't remember who helped me out here. Once you're aware of something, you're obligated to do something about it.
I feel like, I know that Martin Luther King Jr. said things about like injustice anywhere is, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think it was Martin Jr.
I know. And so I became aware of a great injustice of what was going on within our school district. And so that's when a number of us, kind of found our own way together to make a difference there. And fast forward to where we're at now, over the last couple of years, we were able to get rid of that superintendent. We were able to help bring in some stability, but really started focusing more on equity issues. And it's interesting. My best friend Jeanne and I were the co-chairs for an equity and diversity committee, and got a lot of pushback because people didn't want to hear the word equity. So we said, screw it. And we renamed it Excellence and Inclusion, because who can be against excellence and inclusion? Yeah. And then we found out that some people didn't even want the inclusion. It's like, too bad. It's going to be. And so we've really been focused on things like, secret shopper, which secret shopper is the school district. For example, free and reduced lunch those numbers are what they use to determine whether a child can qualify for dual enrollment, qualify for AP waiver testing, those sort of things. But if you make it all online and not accessible even on a cell phone, you really disadvantage a lot of people who don't have that ability or don't have that capability for internet at home. Mm-hmm. And so we really kind of took things back and held up a mirror to people in the district and said, hey, if there's one thing I can do, which is to make all educators, and obviously you get this, but having you help get this all across Arizona and Maricopa County, I would love to have educators look at before they make a major decision, before they make any decision that it's going to impact our kids, is to think about how is this going to impact all our kids. And those aren't just the kids that sit at my dinner table, but all the kids. I guess part of that is, delivering almost 4,000 babies to all my kids. They come from all different backgrounds. They come from all different capabilities or ableism or colors or religions, but they're all my kids. And it's kind of how I approach life. What we were talking about before we started going live was what's going on in Navajo and Hopi. Mm-hmm. So as a retired physician, I was a moderator for a COVID-19 physician group. It's a private Facebook group. And someone said they had a handful of N95s that they were willing to donate. And one of my now new friends, Dr. Jennifer Whitehair, who's a OB-GYN up at Tuba City, said, oh my gosh, we could use them. I said, well, I can't get you more N95s, but I'm a connector. That's what I do. So I put together a Facebook post, took me like, 2 minutes, tagged a bunch of my friends across the country, and it was shared over 1,500 times in 48 hours. 48 hours.
That's amazing.
And so Amazon doesn't deliver to P.O. boxes, by the way.
Good to know.
And most of Navajo Nation is P.O. boxes. And so part of the challenge was finding places that were not P.O. boxes to be able to send things to. So we had a number of different real street addresses where we could ship things. And so was really focused on getting PPE, food, water, cleaning supplies, things like that. And have partnered with, I'm helping support, we'll put it that way, the Navajo Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Group through Ethel Branch. And I think it's important to say I am not speaking on behalf of the Navajo. I'm not speaking for the Navajo. I'm just sharing some of the lessons that I learned and using my privilege to kind of say, hey, these are things I didn't even think about. Stories tell. I had a physician out on the East Coast, someone I had never even met, and she private messaged me and she said, Susan, I'm drawn to the story of what's going on in Navajo Nation. She goes, I'm frontline. I don't have the ability to go buy them something. Can I just, PayPal you and you get what they need? I said, sure. So she said, I just want it to go to the kids. So I reached out to a couple of teachers and I said, what do you need? What could help you with your students more? Jeannie, you taught for quite a few years. What would you think if someone said, hey, I've got a couple $100. What do you need for your kids, for your students?
I mean, books and art supplies and, things to write with and to write on. I'm trying to think. I remember I do middle school and high school. So my first answer is books.
Exactly. And that would have been my first response. My first response would have been books, school supplies, pencils, pens, papers, composition folders, art supplies. You want to know what their first response was? They wanted 100-quart coolers on wheels.
Wow.
Because they wanted to safely bring food to their students.
Wow. That really puts things in perspective, right? It's crazy.
It really did. I mean, that just totally humbled me. It's like I had my vision of what I thought they might want. And then, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. And then we had what they really needed. Okay. And so there are 3 100-quart coolers being delivered this week to a group of Navajo Nation. One was delivered last couple days ago. 2 were delivered last night, along with portable coolers. So we've got a whole bunch of coolers going up to allow them to safely deliver product, deliver food.
So that, that brings up, I think I was talking to my dad. My dad and I, both my parents and I have been communicating a little bit more, but my dad, he tends to worry a little bit. So he wants to check in and make sure that everybody's healthy. And of course, we like to complain about the guy in the White House together. That's one of our, we talk about the Cubs, the guy in the White House, and, now he just wants to make sure that we're all healthy and safe. But
Exactly.
I was telling him about how dire things are on the Navajo Nation. And, he's from Illinois, but he was like, well, explain that to me. And so my dad was really unaware of the things that we take for granted, living in an urban setting. And so I want you to explain too, because I don't think that everybody necessarily knows about some of those things that we take for granted that a lot of people on the Navajo Nation are lacking.
Well, I think, a couple things. One, you're talking about an area that covers 4 states. That's 27,000 square miles. So the size of West Virginia, covered over 4 states with 13 grocery stores. Some of them aren't even big grocery stores, but 13 grocery stores. And on a land that has been contaminated so much by uranium mines that 30% of them do not have running water. Imagine, okay, we're all supposed to be wearing masks and washing our hands. How do you do that when you lack running water? 30% do not have electricity. And then with all the curfews and then the run on the stores, it's a food desert. It's not just high desert, it's a food desert. And so, 13 grocery stores. And some of them might even be the size of a minute one. They're not huge. It's, so access to food, access to water, what some of them described with what they have to do for water. So they've got gray water, they've got drinkable water, they've got water for, farmettes, for animals, things like that. So they've gotten really good at figuring out water. I just go to the tap.
Yeah.
I just go to the tap. I just turn on the electricity. I don't have to think about that. It's 110 out today, 107, something like that. I've got air conditioning. If we run out of something, we can just, order it online and have it put in the back of our vehicle. Multi-generational housing, where one person may be ill. We had a situation last week where we had, someone come, from out of the area who grew up in the area to help take care of his family, and they all got sick. And trying to be able to have the one who was least sick, go, which could be 50 plus miles to get food for the whole family. And so by working with the Navajo Hopi COVID-19 Relief Fund, they have done an absolutely amazing job at being able to get supplies to where it needs to go. I had the fortune to be the fly on the wall in a Zoom call a couple weeks ago and listening to the president of Jeanne College and the challenges that they have. With COVID-19, they had to shut down the college. 86% of the students do not have access to internet. 86%. I mean, here in Scottsdale, people think Scottsdale and how privileged they are. They're absolutely right, but we've got 22% free and reduced lunch. And Scottsdale School District, under Debbie Spalding, the director of IT, we're able to push out over 4,000 Chromebooks and over 4,000 hotspots to take care of kids in our district. What happens if you're going to an area we don't have access to electricity? How does education continue? And in talking with my friends who are school board members across the valley, across the state, how do you have education continue in the face of COVID? Everybody's home, but not everybody has access to internet. Not everybody has access to, Zoom. Not everybody has access to all these different tools that we've had to grab onto for teaching. And I know that on Monday, the state superintendent of education, Kathy Hoffman, is going to be coming out with guidelines for what it's going to look like as far as returning to school. And as a physician, still have my license. I'm not practicing, haven't practiced since the accident, but I'm still on the email list. And I remember when this was starting, getting an email from the superintendent of health saying, don't test people. I repeat that, do not test people. Just treat them as if they're positive. People that were coming in symptomatic because we didn't have the testing. The testing that we originally got was faulty. It wasn't correct anyways. And then they ran out of swabs. You need, swabs, you need reagents, the chemicals to be able to, run the test. And so the testing was horrible. And we were told not to test. But yet it's those test results that are what they're using to be able to identify how the state's doing. We're number 50. Yay, we're number 50. We're number 50 in education and testing for COVID. I mean, as a mom, as a physician, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. We don't have the adequate testing. Some people are like, oh yeah, anybody can get tested now. Well, testing might be 40% false negative. That's horrifying. Horrifying. I was sick in February, went and got an antibody test. I was told it was 99% accurate. It was negative. But now we're finding that those tests may or may not be accurate. So, typically in medicine, for example, I'm old enough that I remember what it was like at the beginning of HIV. Okay. I was one of the very few straight physicians that took care of HIV positive patients. And remember very well during residency, because we didn't know how this spread. We didn't know enough about it. And I got sent a lot of HIV patients because I take them. And how scary it was, taking care of HIV positive little babies, and people didn't know, and the fear and the panic around that. And then going through, H1N1. And then we had a travel clinic. So we were prepared for SARS and MERS. And then actually, when I lived in Michigan, we had a Legionnaires outbreak. So epidemics are not necessarily foreign to me. HIV was a pandemic. H1N1 was a pandemic, but this is a different beast. There's a lot of things that concern me about COVID-19. We don't know enough about it. We know that it hits the vasculature or the blood vessels, and that's why it really affects the lungs, the kidneys, the heart, and that's where we're seeing it affect the kids. A lot of people are like, well, it doesn't affect the kids out there. They'll be fine. They'll be fine in school. Well, no, we don't necessarily know that. There's something called Kawasaki's, which is, kind of simplifying it, will infect the blood vessels in the heart. And I've had a kiddo, in private practice that was in the intensive care unit with Kawasaki's. It's terrifying. And seeing that as a late potential phase or Kawasaki's like syndrome, seeing that as a late potential phase with our kiddos. Last I knew, you probably know more stats about this. What is the average age of a teacher in the state of Arizona? 50? 46, 50?
We have actually a large population of folks who are close to retirement. And I was just listening to NPR this morning, and they were talking about how there's quite a large percentage of teachers who are approaching the age of retirement. One of my best friends, my friend Joyce, she's 71, and she said, I didn't want to retire. I wasn't ready to retire, but I can't imagine going back to work. She doesn't want to get sick. She's got grandchildren and she wants to be around for them.
Right. And so, probably the same sort of, surveys that I saw that you saw, what is it? 20% of the teachers are saying they'd rather retire than come back.
Yeah.
And when we're dealing with an older, we won't necessarily call it an older as opposed to mature, but a population of teachers who've hung in there despite the cuts, despite the decreased pay, because it is their calling, just like medicine is a calling for me. Teaching is a calling for them. They've sucked it up. They've put up with it. They've dealt with, the disrespect, the lack of funding, the trying to piecemeal things together. They didn't go into it to put their lives on the line. And how is that going to look? At our school district, they don't want people to have Clorox wipes or hand sanitizer. That was banned. That was banned because, the kids might get, eczema on their hands, or they might be allergic to it. So they didn't want to have any of that in the schools. And so when we were getting ready to shut down over, spring break, I was emailing, calling, saying, hey, do you guys know what's coming? I was aware of what was going on in January, and, had been communicating with different people saying, hey, we got to prepare. So what is it going to take to get back into the school? You've got to have accurate data, and you've got to have testing. you've got to have contact tracing, and you've got to get antibodies. You know, some people are like, oh, we'll just get herd immunity. Well, no. Some of the thoughts are you have to have at least 70 to 80% of people developing antibodies to have herd immunity. And Sweden basically opened up and did a free-for-all, and they've got 6 to 7% herd immunity. And one of the things that keeps me awake at night with COVID-19 is that there's at least, as of last week, don't know how many now, but as of last week, they'd identified at least 40 different strains.
Wow. So, okay, so that makes me think of the naval ship, where the
Right.
captain of the ship or the admiral, whatever, was pleading, saying, we've got major problems here and we need support. And I read recently, I want to say it was like last week, about how some of those sailors are getting it again. And so that's what that means, right? Like if there's 40 different strains, we could potentially get it 40 different times, right?
Right.
That's
We just don't know. We don't know if antibody to one is going to confer antibody to all. We don't know what load you have to have an antibody. And we don't have enough information right now. They're working, the cool thing is there's lots of really smart people working on this, but unfortunately a lot of those really smart people are also being suppressed on what they can release. There was a 17-page guidelines for reopening the economy by the CDC, and that was, they wouldn't allow it to come out. So fortunately, there were some people that were thinking we as opposed to me, and leaked it. And but there's a lot of things. I mean, going back to the secret shopper aspect, when you walk into a school, do you have hand sanitizer readily available? Do you have signs out there? When H1N1 was hitting, and we had the travel clinic, we had signs at the entrance to our clinic saying, if you're running a fever, if you've been in these areas, please go back to your car and call us. We had masks at the front desk. We had hand sanitizer at the front desk. We'd have people call and we'd bring them in through the back door wearing wearing gloves and masks, and bring them in and swab them in through the back door into a special exam room. And then we'd leave that exam room, we'd sterilize it back down. I mean, we don't know enough about this. So I'm sure you've got a couple questions. I'm just glad I'm not the one making all the decisions. I'm glad I'm not Kathy Hoffman right now. But we need to look at it from a public health lens. We really need to. Because
I'm really eager to see what Superintendent Hoffman has to say about safely opening up our schools. We're all scrambling. We're talking about hybrid option. We're talking about fully virtual until X date option. We're talking about, just, all right, we're going to open up schools and try to socially distance, when in some cases we have classes of over 30 kids in rooms that are designed for 25. So, I mean, and like you said, there's some really smart people who could help us figure all of this out. And unfortunately, their voices kind of keep getting pushed off to the side. And so, yeah, we're really nervous. I think about, I don't even know how to keep little ones. I do middle school and high school. And it's already hard enough to keep them to keep their hands off of themselves. Right. And so with the little ones, and, they're little germ factories. Whenever the school year starts is when my cold and flu season starts, because I'm around kids all the time. And so I just think about, them touching their faces, and are they washing their hands for the right amount of time? It's just every single school board member I know, every single teacher I know, and many of the parents that I know are really nervous about the coming school year. There's just so much uncertainty. And when we feel like we don't have necessarily the strongest leadership, it only contributes to that uncertainty, because there's this, what I've seen over these, the past week or so, and I saw today there was another spike, right, of new cases as well as deaths in Arizona. And I mean, I see people out and about, they're not wearing masks, they're not taking any kind of precautions. And I'm very very concerned about what the coming weeks are going to show us. I have lots of friends who work in the healthcare field, and I feel like that's why we're doing this, right? I mean, that's a big part of why we're doing this, so we don't overwhelm our healthcare system and our healthcare workers. And so when I see so many people out, it just makes me very, very nervous and worried for the people I care about who are in the healthcare field, who will, have to decide whether they're going to go back to teaching in August or whether they're going to take an early retirement or have to change careers. It's just, it's a very tough situation.
It really is. And I think, brought up a good point. Flattening the curve doesn't mean that it's gone away. It means that there's room in the ICU for you.
Yep.
And I think, the other thing is, and I know we've got 1 minute left,
Yeah.
Funding. Is there going to be a difference in funding for an online hybrid versus in classroom? In classroom, if you're going to try to social distance, you're going to have to cut them in half. Are you going to get decreased funding if you've got parents who are saying, it's just like, when the governor said, hey, all the restaurants are open, not everybody ran out to the restaurants. Not everybody went to their favorite watering hole. I think that may very well be what we have happen here too, is a lot of parents are going to say, hey, I'm going to keep my kid at home. I'm going to do online school, or I'm going to do something else. How is that going to affect the 100-day numbers for funding? Right now, the funding is so horrible, and we're asking teachers to do something that they were not trying to do, which is to teach virtually. And just like one of the reasons why I didn't stay in family, why I went into family practice, which was to have the relationships with my patients. The teachers thrive and the kids thrive with the relationships that they have with each other. And how is that going to be impacted?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to try to at least end on a more positive note. So let's do this, because you're a Cubs fan.
Yeah.
I have two questions. First, favorite Chicago. Well, you know what? Before I do that, hold on. I want to let everybody know that if they want to help, that Susan has provided a link, and I will share that as soon as I'm done with the videos. If you want to help with what's going on the reservation, there are ways for you to help. It could be donating supplies, it could be donating money, but there's still very much in need up there. And Susan is a great facilitator for those needs. And I appreciate the work that you've done. So I'll put that up. But now for the fun stuff. So favorite Cub of all time, and your favorite Cub, your favorite current Chicago Cub.
Ooh. Okay. So I loved watching Ron Santo. I loved watching Fergie Jenkins. So favorite Cub of all time probably would be Fergie Jenkins. And a couple years ago, my parents came to visit for spring training, and they had the old timers booth where you could, buy whatever for charity. And so they had Fergie Jenkins there. And I went up to him and I bought a hat and he signed it. My dad was there. And I just wanted the picture. So put the hat on and had a picture there with my dad and Fergie Jenkins. And that evening, I gave my dad the hat. And he goes, no, you got this hat. I said, Dad, I remember you taking me to Cubs games when I was little. I wanted the picture. You hold on to the hat. So that would probably be my favorite old time. Current, I love Rizzo. I love watching Bryant. But Rizzo's got heart. As of someone who's been beaten down medically, I appreciate the tenacity that he has. One of my friends who's also a diehard Cub fan got COVID-19 and was battling really hard. And I kept saying, what would Rizzo do? And she said, he'd probably donate the money to a children's cancer fund, Susan. So yeah, fun fact, Rizzo, love Rizzo. I've got all these Cub hats over there, but got like 5 Cub hats on the rack over there. But love Rizzo. Love Fergie Jenkins. Love the Cubs. Always rooting for the underdog. And, you know, right now they're undefeated, so they're number one.
Yes. So I think, now I've finally come to the conclusion that I think I might have only one. I can answer that with just one Cub, and that's Javier Baez, El Mago.
Yeah.
He's totally my favorite, the magician. I'll go on YouTube and just watch videos of him working his magic because it's the greatest thing ever. Yeah.
He is amazing.
And
absolutely amazing.
2016 World Series, best World Series of all time. Just saying. And people
exactly. Exactly. I love it.
Well, thank you so much, Susan, for joining me today and sharing about what the needs for the Navajo Nation. I appreciate all that you do. I appreciate how you support not only healthcare workers, but teachers. You're just a good person through and through. And I'm so glad I got to meet you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I cannot wait to have you be our Maricopa County School Superintendent. So thank you so much, Jeannie. Appreciate you, mate.
Thank you, Susan. I'll see you later.
All right, bye.